Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching another episode of All Sports. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football and NBA basketball. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with NFL football, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. The Steelers signed Ben Roethlisberger to a new contract for the 2021 season. The Broncos placed the franchise tag on Justin Simmons, so all 32 NFL teams have the option of having the franchise tag, which means if there is one player that they could lose in free agency, if they place the franchise tag on one individual player if they pick, and they have the option to use the tag or not use the tag. But if they decide to use the tag, they get to pick one player, they place the tag on him so that player does not hit free agency, and they have all the way until training camp to negotiate a new deal. Now every year there are certain teams, and there are a few teams that do use the franchise tag, because there is definitely one player that they have on their roster that they do not want to lose in free agency, and by placing the tag on him, they're still able to keep that player on their roster. But if they don't place the tag on him, then they hit free agency, and there's a great chance they will sign with a different team. Now, the way the tag works is they have the next few months to negotiate a new contract. Now, if they can't negotiate a new contract by the time training camp begins, then that player will play on the franchise tag for the next season at a certain dollar amount. Now, every team has the option of being able to place the franchise tag on the same player year after year. The only thing is, when a player plays on the tag and they happen to get tagged again, that dollar amount that they're going to play for that season keeps increasing. So it's better to use the tag to guarantee that they'll still be on the team, but it's better to negotiate a new contract, because the more you keep placing a franchise tag on a player, the more expensive they're going to get, and the more money you're going to have to pay in their new contract. So every team has the option to use the franchise tag. Some teams use it, some teams don't, but the teams that have used it, it can definitely help them and benefit them in the long run, so they don't lose a certain player in free agency because they were not able to negotiate a new contract before free agency began. And now that they were able to place a franchise tag on a certain player, they have a few more months to negotiate a new contract before that player would have to play on the franchise tag if they do not get a new contract. Now, another reason players might get the franchise tag is because the team wants to see how they play for another year before they take the gamble and decide if this player is worth keeping on their roster going into the future and worth paying this amount of money. Now, putting a franchise tag on a player, usually it doesn't cost that much. But at least you can see how this player would play for another season instead of signing them to a new contract and they land up being a bust or a player you do not want on your team anymore. So there are definitely some pros and cons about the franchise tag, but overall there are a lot of pros about putting a franchise tag on a certain individual player, and we'll have to wait and see how many teams decide to use the franchise tag for certain individual players on their roster this year. The Broncos have already used it. Nobody was really surprised that they put the franchise tag on Justin Simmons again, but everyone's hoping that the Broncos can sign Justin Simmons to a new contract before the start of the 2021 season. After Justin Simmons, played on the franchise tag for the 2020 season, the Broncos definitely seen that it's worth paying Justin Simmons as much as they need to, so he remains on the Broncos roster and plays for the Broncos for the next few years. So it was definitely worth the Broncos putting the franchise tag on Justin Simmons for the 2020 season. It was definitely great that they have already put the franchise tag on him again. Hopefully they can negotiate a new deal, because Justin Simmons was somebody they did not want to hit free agency, because there was a great chance he would get signed to a new team, and the Broncos need a safety and a really good safety, and they definitely want Justin Simmons to remain on the Broncos. So hopefully they negotiate a new contract in the coming months, and Justin Simmons plays for the Broncos for a few more seasons. Washington released Alex Smith. The Saints released Emmanuel Sanders. Moving on now to NBA basketball, Blake Griffin signed a contract with the Nets for the rest of this season. At 36 years old, LeBron James is the oldest player to lead his team in points, rebounds, and assists at the All-Star break. Team LeBron beat Team Durant 170-150 in the 2021 NBA All-Star Game on Sunday, March 7 in Atlanta. Giannis Antetokounmpo was named the Kobe Bryant MVP for the 2021 All-Star Game. For the fourth straight year, Team LeBron has won the All-Star Game. LeBron James now has the third most assists in All-Star Game history. Steph Curry is a 2021 three-point contest champion. Steph Curry is now a two-time three-point contest champion. Alfred Simmons is a 2021 slam dunk contest champion. Alfred Simmons is the first Trailblazer to win a dunk contest. Domantas Sabonis is a 2021 Skills Challenge champion. Before the NBA All-Star Game, they did the Skills Challenge and the three-point contest. Then they had the All-Star Game, and during halftime, they did the Slam Dunk contest. So there's no doubt that the 2021 All-Star Game was definitely different compared to previous All-Star Games. So originally, the 2021 NBA All-Star Game wasn't supposed to happen during the 2020-2021 season. Originally, they were not going to have an All-Star Game and the festivities due to the coronavirus pandemic. And before the start of this season, they actually canceled it, but they still had plans on having an All-Star break without the All-Star Game and festivities. But as we got closer to the All-Star break, the NBA did decide to have an All-Star Game and the festivities. There was no doubt that the All-Star break was going to be different, and the All-Star Game and festivities was going to be different due to the coronavirus pandemic. But originally, they did not want to do the All-Star Game and festivities, but they landed up planning on having an All-Star Game and festivities, and there was no doubt that it was different due to the pandemic. And originally, the All-Star Game was not supposed to be in Atlanta. It was supposed to be in a different city, but when the NBA decided to do the All-Star Game, they decided to do it in Atlanta. And it was a great choice because Atlanta just got a new arena for the Atlanta Hawks. So it was great that the All-Star Game was able to go to Atlanta. Now, during the All-Star break, they usually spread out the events, and the All-Star Game is played on its own day, and the other festivities are the day before or they're on different days. But with this All-Star Game and festivities, they decided to do it all on the same day. Some of the festivities was before the All-Star Game, and they also did one of the events during the All-Star Game at halftime. So there's no doubt that this All-Star Game and festivities was definitely different compared to years past due to the coronavirus pandemic. But the NBA is happy that they were able to do an All-Star Game and festivities, even though it wasn't planned and it was planned at the last minute. But overall, It was great to see an all-star game and festivities, and that the NBA was able to accomplish this, even though the NBA originally had planned they were not going to do it. But the NBA is happy that they were able to do the All-Star Game. And with the Atlanta Hawks allowing fans at the Hawks games, there were a few fans at the All-Star Game. I was kind of expecting some fans at the All-Star Game since the Hawks were allowing fans at their games. Now it was different compared to years past, especially with the All-Star Game, because you always see a sold-out crowd. That wasn't the case for this All-Star Game. The NBA is hoping that as this season comes to an end, more arenas, more teams will let fans into their stands, even though it's just going to be a limited amount. The NBA is hoping that next season can be possibly normal and that more fans can be at the All-Star Game next season and potentially have sold-out arenas for games and for the All-Star Game next season. We're going to have to wait and see. But with the coronavirus pandemic, anything can happen. But overall, this was a great All-Star Game and festivities. One thing that has changed about the All-Star Game, especially in the last few years, is that they do not do the East versus the West, since a lot of the superstars and the big name players are in the Western Conference, and you kind of already know who would win the All-Star Game since most of the great players are in the Western Conference now since they moved from the Eastern Conference. So what they landed up doing, kind of like what the NFL does with the Pro Bowl, they pick 2 captains, and then you have all the players that get selected to the All-Star Game as starters or reserves be drafted, regardless if they're from the Eastern or Western Conference, and the 2 captains that go against each other in the All-Star Game will have players from the Eastern and Western Conference. So they've tried to make the All-Star Game more fair, especially that a lot of the big name players are in the Western Conference and they don't want one conference to dominate the other. But regardless of how the All-Star Game is formatted, it's always a great game. After Kobe Bryant died last year, they changed the name of the MVP award to the Kobe Bryant MVP award, so that's another great thing about the All-Star Game. And there's no doubt that the NBA All-Star Game and their festivities is one of the best All-Star Games in all of sports. And I would definitely rank the NBA All-Star Game as being one of the best All-Star Games in all of sports, especially in our 4 major sports leagues here in the U.S. Moving on now to the show, what to watch for this week in sports: the Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Avalanche, NHL hockey, college basketball. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.